So, arrested, not convicted. Got more Rhetoric coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back. For more common sense logical reasoning, as always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So I got more Rhetoric for y'all. Arrested, not convicted is an example of end result thinking. Again, black people focusing on the end result, ignoring how we got there. They always focus on the what, never the how and why. And because oftentimes the how and the why completely destroys black victimhood. Anyway, black people are always deflecting away from factual data, especially data looks unfavorable basically upon black people. Any data that looks bad upon blacks, they're always deflecting away for it, trying to find ways to blame it on a system and never taking personal responsibility for that end result. The way they do this all the time. Now, arrested and not convicted is yet another example of this. And basically the argument behind this is that murder stats are based off of a person was arrested for a murder and not if a person was convicted of that murder. Now, I put this up there. I equate this with the, all cities don't report to the FBI. And of course, the way FBI gets its crime data is that police departments will report their data to the FBI. The FBI will analyze that data and then come up with crime stats based off the data that they receive. Now, all cities don't report 100%. And some areas, some small rural areas, don't report at all. Now, they will look at this and say, well, when you start talking about black people being 13% of the population and responsible for half the murders, they'll say, well, all cities don't report. As if all cities reported, then the crime rates between the murder rates between black people and white people will be identical. It completely ignoring the fact that there are black people who live in rural communities. And typically the worst rural places to live are places where ghetto ratchet black people are. So if all cities reported, there's possibility that that gap could even be greater between black people and white people. Of course, they just don't have no clue. They just throw anything out there. And arrested, not convicted is exactly the same thing. They will throw out there that the murder rate is based off of a person being arrested for something, not necessarily convicted. Now, the problem with this, though, is that regardless of how the murder is calculated, the fact is that a murder still took place. So if they arrest someone for a murder and that person isn't convicted, there still was a murder. Someone was still murdered. Regardless if they arrest the person who committed the murder, but they didn't have enough evidence to convict him and that person got off for it, or they arrested the wrong person and the evidence showed that person had nothing to do with it, and then that person also is not charged and goes free. The fact is that you still have a murder that was committed in that community. They believe that it shouldn't count because there was no conviction. Yeah, but there still was a murder though. So regardless if the person was innocent or the person was guilty of the murder, the fact is that the murder was committed. So somebody committed a murder. So therefore, the community is not. It's not like the community is less dangerous or your community is safer now because you changed the unit of measurement. No, murder was still committed, and the city is still just as dangerous as it is. Not, like I said, it's not going to change that. It's not going to make the city safer because how you count the beans. It's the same thing with what they say in Baltimore, how since that mayor took over, the crime rates went down. Yeah, well, how do y'all calculate these murders? The fact is, like I said, this is a perfect example of black people just repeating the rhetoric. I always say that black folks, they can repeat the rhetoric, but very rarely can they defend it. And they're all, again, more often than not, they're even clueless to what it means. Like, so like I say, if they start basing murders off of if a person was convicted or not, does that mean that the city is safer now, or the murder didn't happen and the city is safer now? No, it's just idiotic. Anyway, y'all, like I say, if you ever hear any one of these pro-blacks or brainwashed blacks or race officers crying that arrested, not convicted, well, now you know, and knowing it's half the battle, and it's always y'all until next time. By the way, forgot something. I forgot something. What happens if nobody gets arrested for the murder? So now the murder didn't count at all. So then therefore, it's a possibility that the murder rate of the black community could be higher.